How early is too early to panic about player performance as an NFL fan? And is week two an appropriate time to start worrying? I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active independent Jets message board on the web. So the Jets, listen, time to move on from the Dallas game. You lost 30 to 10. You got blown out. A lot of things went wrong. The offensive line was a mess. Your quarterback played as well as he's played in quite some time, but it didn't matter because the defense was falling apart. Offensively, you didn't even try to run the ball. So much went wrong, but you've got another game coming up. You're getting ready for the New England Patriots, division opponent, a chance to go 2-0 in the division after beating the Bills in week 1. But Jets fans are freaking out about some players, about the state of the roster. Is some of this an overreaction? Some of it absolutely, but there are a few guys, a few players who a lot of Jets fans, myself included, had a lot of questions about coming into this season. And we still have questions. Again, it's only week 2, but if you go back to last year, carrying over to this year, I feel like some concern for a few guys is justified. And if you look at the offensive line, it starts there, right? And part of it is what makes this an even more difficult question to answer is the fact that, as you well know, these guys just did not play together in the preseason. They didn't. And the guys who are the two biggest problems right now, Dwayne Brown and Laken Tomlinson, they're like the established, proven veterans who've been around forever. So you would expect them to be able to get ramped up quickly, but maybe not in the case of Dwayne Brown. Maybe Dwayne Brown has lost that step or two that we feared he might. All right. I talked about it a few times this offseason. He was going to be a big part of this O line, and he was either going to be an average to above average tackle, even if you want to say anywhere from, slightly above average some days, slightly below average some days, somewhere in the middle other days. But really, what he's shown so far has been terrible. Now, again, is this him losing a couple steps and no longer being capable of playing the position? Or is this a guy coming back from an injury who didn't really have a training camp? And this is his camp. And it turns out for him, camp is live, live action. And the same for Laken Tomlinson. Didn't play a whole lot in the preseason, but Laken Tomlinson is coming off of a terrible year last year. Got big money, was a disappointment at left guard, and now we're seeing that carry over. So this isn't to worry about Laken Tomlinson and Dwayne Brown right now isn't like, settle down. It's only week 2. There's still a lot of time ahead of them. Right, but there's a lot of time behind them too. And we saw the drop off for Laken Tomlinson from the time he's arrived. And you know, I've heard many people say, I've brought it up myself, that Tomlinson was a guy who was really a key component to this offense this year, and they were going to need him to get back on track. So far, that hasn't happened. Again, Dwayne Brown. He's a guy you look at, you say he's in his late 30s, 38, 39 years old. How long till the wheels come off for him? So now you're looking at him thinking, have the wheels come off? Or is it a camp that he didn't participate in that's taking him a little while to find his legs? So we're gonna find out. It's not I don't the Jets aren't gonna pull him anytime soon. At least I don't think they will. But those are 2 guys who are huge parts of this offense. And if they continue to play at this level, the Jets are gonna have 2 very expensive players who don't belong on the field. And I know there are some people after the performance from Dwayne Brown the other day specifically, they're ready for him to be gone now. But again, you take a guy, again, 38, 39. Maybe he lost half a step, didn't have a training camp, and then he's facing Micah Parsons. It was a perfect storm for that type of performance, basically. Every aspect, every negative aspect of that game, everything that, as they say, could go wrong, did go wrong. So lack of preparation, you've got age, you've got these factors for Dwayne Brown, and then by the way, we're having you face LT 2.0. So it was a rough game for him, but Jets fans justifiably panicked. As I said, his age was a factor to me coming into the season where you hoped like hell he's got one more year left in him. And then, if he doesn't, at least my thought process was you drafted Carter Warren. You can try to develop him. Billy Turner, I don't think he's the guy. Max Mitchell, not the guy. If anything, if you're going to pull Dwayne Brown, then just go ahead and flip Makai Becton to the left side and let the other guys fight for the right tackle spot would really probably be the best thing to do. But just in terms of whether or not guys are washed up or whether or not guys should be pulled, I don't think week 2 is too early to talk about some of these guys because of what they got from them last year. And another guy, Dalvin Cook, he's at about 2 yards a carry right now. And I understand they didn't run it a lot last week. He had a fumble, and I'm sure you saw the graphic during the game. He had 4 fumbles last year, tying him for most in the NFL among running backs. And now this year he's got one already. Doesn't doesn't look like the explosive guy he was a year or 2 ago. And again, another guy who didn't have a camp. Sat out camp waiting to sign a deal. And you saw, veteran players do it. I was at McAfee, one of them. I think the McAfee show, may have been Pac-Man Jones, somebody on there, former player, was basically saying, I mean, he's going to take camp off. That's what vets do. He'll sign right before the season starts. And that's what he did. He only got a couple practices in. So now Dalvin Cook, is he rusty or is this a continued decline? Because we talked about how even last year he wasn't the same player he was in previous years. So was that a one off or was that the beginning of the end for him and the decline has continued? So that's a question the Jets have to ask themselves. I took a ton of heat. The evolution of my thought process on Dalvin Cook was, and this is probably before I watched much of what he did last year. I just kind of thought, well, if the Jets feel like he can upgrade the backfield, then go for it. Add him. And then I watched him a little bit and I thought, he doesn't really look like the guy I thought he was, but still felt like, you know what, he'd be a good RB2. For what he's done in his career, you have him behind Brees Hall. You could do worse. And the process went on and on. And it reached the point where I kind of said, you know what, move on from this guy. Go with Bam Knight. Go with Michael Carter. Go with Izzy Abanikanda. These guys are good players. And the Jets continued pursuing him. And I thought while the Jets were trying to sign Cook, I thought they were talking $3-4 million. Then it comes out they signed him 7 million guaranteed. He can earn some more. He can earn up to 9 million. To me, that was a lot of money for a guy who, to me, wasn't an enormous upgrade over what they had. And now it's looking like he's not an upgrade at all. But again, let's remind ourselves, no camp. So perhaps that's affecting him. But you can make a case, you can make an argument, even if you want to give him that leeway, that slack, and say, "I'm not worried. He's a proven veteran. We know he's explosive. He didn't have a training camp. Give him a couple more weeks, and he'll be rolling." Fine, but you're also, very justified in saying he didn't look like the same guy last year that he did the year before that or the year before that. Like he already looked like he was starting to trend downward, and now we're just seeing that continue. So that could be the case. So we're gonna have to wait a little while to find out. But it could be that the Jets have a guy in Dalvin Cook, a running back who they're paying 9 million. For my money, for what we're seeing from him, when you look at the fact that the Jets offense right now is sort of they don't have a lot of playmakers. Or we should say they're not getting the ball. And again, Dallas is one game. But my primary concern is the receiver group. In that you've got Garrett Wilson and behind him, not much. Even Mecole Hardman, we can talk about how fast he is, but he's been largely a gadget guy for much of his career, and he's not even seeing the field now. Now, are the Jets now viewing him as, yeah, he's a gadget guy. He's not a guy you can use as a regular player. Um, or is Hackett just dropping the ball here and not playing a guy more who he should be playing? But getting back to Cook, I look at Cook versus a guy like Izzy Abanikanda, and I'm thinking, well, if you're going to try to throw some swings and screens to kind of, mitigate other teams' pass rush and hold them off a little and keep them honest, I would rather Izzy Abanikanda. Izzy Abanikanda to me is like a 4-3 guy, and Dalvin Cook was a 4-4-1 guy years ago when he was drafted. He's not going, you're going to lose a little bit over time. The number of carries, the beatings that he's taken. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Dalvin Cook is not a 4-4-1 guy right now. So give me the younger, more explosive guy who's more likely to make a play when you get him the ball. 'Cause I don't feel like Cook is that guy. And hopefully, again, I'm not saying that we know beyond the shadow of a doubt that Cook is at the end of the line at this point, but you have to consider, is he getting there? Is he getting to a point where he's going to just be an average back? And you're not paying him like an average back, and you have other backs who might be able to do more than he can. So we'll see. That again, something worth keeping an eye on, but I think it would be foolish to tell any fan who's worried about Dalvin Cook's production that it's too early. Oh, it's early. It's premature. It's only a couple weeks. Yeah, but it goes back to last year. But again, the argument you have on the other side is let's see what he does with the training camp. And then you have Carl Lawson, another guy coming back 2 years removed from an injury now. And granted, didn't play week one. Um, I'm only a little bit into the all 22 because NFL.com's giving me some issues, so I haven't been able to get through it today. I'm watching it as it's allowing me, but the limited number of reps I've seen from Carl Lawson, I'm not a, doesn't jump out at you. Doesn't look like a guy who's worth what you're paying him. But again, another guy didn't have much of a camp. 2 years removed from an injury though, so he's supposed to be ready to roll. He said he was looking at double digit sacks this year, which of course player projecting what they're going to do doesn't carry a great deal of meaning. But the expectations were that he would be healthy and ready to roll. And is all of this together? You look at all these guys, like the common thread, the common theme is not really playing in the preseason. And what can you say about that? You see, there's so many different schools of thought. Mike Tomlin said during the preseason, I play my guys because you have to spar to fight. And he went out in week one and got their teeth kicked in, right? The Steelers. But then they had a really strong game yesterday. Robert Sala. I mean, Sala to me, one of the more surprising developments in the offseason was not taking an extra week of preparation because you hear, right? We hear from former players, we hear from coaches, former coaches. They talk about how the current CBA there's just not enough time to incorporate everything you want to in training camp because they've taken away hours and days and you're so limited and you need more time to incorporate what you want to do and that's why teams start the year off sloppy a lot of times. And then Robert Sala, because the Jets had the Hall of Fame game, gave up a week of OTAs and said, "You know what? We don't want those because we have an extra week to prep anyway." That was surprising to me. I thought the emphasis would have been Super Bowl contender. We've got Aaron Rodgers. We've got a new offense. We've got a lot of new pieces. Let's get every single minute of practice that we can. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason. I'm just saying that that's one thing to consider is that you gave up the extra week. And then, once preseason games came, the guys didn't really play. They didn't get on the field. So this for a lot of guys is their preseason. This is their this is their baptism to the 2023 season because they didn't do a lot prior to the start of the season. So we'll find out, right? Give it a couple more weeks. And if Dwayne Brown is still playing the way he's playing and Laken Tomlinson is still struggling and Dalvin Cook is still averaging 2 yards a carry, then we'll have a pretty good idea that, you know what? Maybe these guys, maybe the downward trend started last year and has carried on through this season. So I'm not here to say that these guys are definitely trending downward and there's no way they'll bounce back. I will say I'm worried that that's the case. Um, Again, part of the reason Cook, I thought, and and with the Cook thing, it's not an easy one because he's done so much in the past. He is a proven vet, but you can't sign guys for what they've done previous years with previous teams. You got to look at what they have right now. And if you looked at what Cook did last year, to me, this is just my opinion, he didn't look like a $9 million guy. He looked like a guy that if he wanted 9 million, I would have said thank you, but I'm going to go with Michael Carter and Bam Knight, and we'll roll with them. The Jets didn't; they had Cook, so they've got some guys where there's a trend here. It's not these guys are coming off great seasons, and now after week two, people are panicking. That would be absurd, right? But that's not the case here. It's a trend, or it is trending. We'll see if they get that trend turned around, get headed in the right direction. The Jets have, as I said, they've got New England up next. We will talk about and preview that this week on Thursday night. Myself, Chris Schubert, Dylan Terriman. Uh, Give them a follow on Twitter at D Terriman or on X at Chris Schubert. Give me a follow at JN Radio _ Glenn GLENN. And check us out. There will be lots of all 22 stuff coming out today as long as NFL.com obliges. Have a good one, Jets fans.